Hey guys, I'm doing something a little bit different today. I'm filming with my laptop camera instead of my phone. Maybe it's more stable, but it's because the Wi-Fi here is really testy, and I'm getting huge charges on my phone since I can't connect to it, but I can on my laptop. I'm also dressed super casually in my Appalachian Mountain Brewery gear. It's the weekend here, so I don't have to dress up, and also my clothes finally arrived from New York after not being here for 3 days. Pretty miserable. So I'm just trying to be comfortable. By the way, I did brew or I was on the brew team at Appalachian Mountain Brewery for 4 years. Ended up mostly in packaging, so canning, kegging, bottling, and stuff like that. But I'm also created my own recipes and brewed my own beer. So, for example, this is Dr. Crime. That's me. That's my nickname. So if you create a recipe and brew it, you can name it whatever you want. I decided to name it after me. Now I've only made it once, but if it's ever back, check it out. It's a powerful, wonderful, amazing beer. Now I'm not promoting that, by the way. I'm not promoting beer because, as you'll see, I'll talk about this briefly. Alcohol is very bad for you, and it often leads to antisocial behavior. So I'll get back to that. Now, on your As You Learn page, you'll see a link to a website about why people commit crime. You'll see a whole wide range of theories there, from rational choice theory that people choose to commit crime because it brings them pleasure, to social learning theory that crime is learned in interaction with close social groups like families and friends. It goes on and on and on. Enemy and strain theories about not being able to achieve your financial goals legally, so you create new means to achieve them out of frustration. There's so many different theories you'll see. And I teach a theories of crime class at App. So if you're interested in that, we'll definitely get into that much more detail than in Intro to Criminal Justice. We also have a criminology class in sociology that I'm sure covers a lot of the same material, but in different ways. And of course, you know how to Google. So there's a lot of information about these theories of crime online. You have an assignment about that. You're going to be asked your opinion about what you think, why people do it. But I wanted to point out a few important things and then give you the approach that I use. That it's probably more comprehensive and more accurate in terms of understanding why people do it. First of all, every one of you is a criminal. Every one of you has broken the law at some point. I ask this question in my classes every semester: how many of you have broken the law? And every semester, everyone's hand goes up. So that's important because if you're going to have a theory of why people commit crime, you have to consider that crime is normal. Crime starts off as antisocial behavior as children. Children do all kinds of antisocial things normally: talk back, run away, um, hit each other out of frustration, push each other. Things that if you did would be illegal now. Bite, bite someone. That's typically, almost always illegal, especially if you're trying to hurt them and if it's against their will. Um, but then, people start committing juvenile delinquency as kids, and then they start committing crime as adults. Most people don't start committing delinquency until they're adolescents. That's considered normal. Breaking the rules to learn them. These are adolescent limited offenders or late starters. That's normal. Early starters, people who start early in their lives as kids committing crimes, even though we don't call it that since they're kids, but serious bad acts, they tend to be stable over their life course, and they become what are called life course persistent offenders. That is, their criminality persists or continues over the course of their life. These are not normal. This is usually the result of something very traumatic in their lives early on, or some biological abnormality, genetic abnormality, brain chemistry imbalance, that sort of thing. Now, this is well understood, so you can Google any of this stuff: early starters, late starters, adolescent limited offenders, life course persistent offenders, if you want to know more. Now, here's my approach. When I teach theories of crime, I see all these different theories. You'll see them on that website on your As You Learn page. And they all seem to have some validity. They all seem to do some good explaining why people commit crime. under different circumstances, they all seem to have some evidence that they're true. So to better understand crime, what I try to do is combine them into a single approach. So I use a perspective called integrated systems, which you can Google if you're interested. Just make sure you Google integrated systems in crime or integrated systems in my name, because I created a theory of crime based on this perspective. Not a lot of people know about this approach. A lot more people know about the theory as it's actually been tested now. But here's the idea. You are an organism, and you are a living system. You're a person. You are comprised of organs, like the brain, and those are made up of things like cells, for example, genetics. So a large portion of your genetics are responsible for simply building your brain as it interacts with the environment. Then you're an organism with the brain, and brain chemistry has a big impact on your behavior. So alcohol is what I wanted to make sure I talked about. Alcohol affects your brain in such a way that it increases the risk of antisocial behavior because it basically weakens the frontal part of your brain, the part that's responsible for rationality and good behavior, allowing the temporal lobes or the limbic system, the caveman brain as I often call it, to stand up and take over. So there might be things you want to do or that sound like fun, but you don't do them because the frontal part of your brain says it's not a good idea. There's consequences for that if you do it. Drinking too much, engaging in unprotected sex, driving super fast. These are things that might be fun, but there's consequences. So the frontal part of your brain says you don't want to do that. Well, that alcohol impairs that part of the brain, enabling people to listen to the caveman part of the brain. So if you look up this topic, sexual assault on college campuses, it's obviously potentially very upsetting, triggering for many people, particularly victims or people who know victims. You see that between 50 and 75% of sexual assaults on college campuses, depending upon the data source, involve alcohol use by either the offender and or the victim. It's clearly a relationship, and we see that at App State as well, unfortunately. But that's just one risk factor. That's one thing that puts you at risk for committing antisocial behavior or being a victim. There are also risk factors in your genetics at the cell level, and there are risk factors in your body, things like hormones and what you eat, drugs you take, your IQ level, all these personality traits. There are theories that deal with all these things inside you, but there are also risk factors at the group level, which is like things like your friends and your family. So we know parenting has a big impact on crime, as does who you hang out with and how much reward you get from your friends for deviance and things like that. But then there's risk factors in your neighborhood. That's where theories like social disorganization come in. And criminal justice can play a role in crime. Policing and courts are thought to reduce crime. That's deterrence theory. But they also, through punishment, I should say, but they also might increase crime by damaging offenders and labeling them troublemakers or bad people. And if people accept that label, they might actually commit more crime. That's called labeling theory. Then there's risk factors in your society. So you'll see theories like enemy and strain theories that blame crime on the economy, a society level factor. The economy is an institution in society that dominates our lives and puts us under immense pressure to achieve wealth at any means necessary, at any means possible. So this integrated systems approach that I use looks at things at the cell level, like genetics, the organ level, like brain chemistry, the individual level, things like drug use, on the group level, things like parenting and friends, the community level, which is things like your neighborhood conditions that you live in. The organization level deals with things like criminal justice organizations and their impact on crime, and the society level, which deals with things in your country like the economy. And all of these things, in each of these levels, there are things called risk factors that put you at risk for crime. But there are also protective factors. And protective factors are the opposite of risk factors typically. They're things that protect you from crime or make crime less likely. So, in my humble opinion, based on my research, my teaching, and what I've published, criminality happens when you are exposed to a lot of risk factors, particularly when those risk factors are strong and you're exposed to them early in life. And the way to prevent crime is to either reduce exposure to those risk factors or expose you to more protective factors, things that are good for you, things that make crime less likely. And those protective factors should be many, and they should be strong, and you should be exposed to them early in life. So pick up a crime prevention book, and you'll see often what crime prevention boils down to is simply making people's lives better. Give people a reason not to commit crime. The final point I'll make, we have this amazing study that followed children from the juvenile court all the way to the age of 70. And these people, many of these kids, they were all boys. They grew up to be men who committed serious crimes. So they were adjudicated delinquent and found delinquent as kids and became serious criminals as adults. Some of them stopped and some of them didn't. The researchers were trying to find out why. And here's what they determined. The ones who stopped had gotten into a meaningful, fulfilling marriage. The ones who stopped had successful, fulfilling, meaningful careers. And this often included military service at the time. The ones who continued to commit crime continued to have problems at work, and they might have gotten married, but it wasn't a successful marriage. Marriage after marriage or relationship after relationship. Now they couldn't explain why some people were successful at work and some people were successful at marriage while others weren't. Maybe that's luck. Maybe that's determination. Maybe that's will. Maybe it's all of that. But the point is, having something to lose, a meaningful, fulfilling marriage, a meaningful, fulfilling career, stops people from committing crime. That's called a stake in conformity, a reason to conform. And you'll see that in the theories online called social control theory. So there's some validity there. So what happens when you get married and you have a successful marriage and a successful career? You stop going out drinking. You stop hanging out with deviant friends. You make new friends. You make law-abiding friends. You have kids, you make friends with kids. These are things that you have to lose that are valuable to you that you would not want to give up by committing crime. So maybe that's how we end up committing crime, is just by making people's lives better. Now, even if you agree with that, how we do that is very difficult. So what do you think? How would we make it so people can get in meaningful, fulfilling marriages and careers? What could the government do to try to prevent crime in that way? Something to think about. All right, do your assignment on this, and I will see you guys soon.